Good afternoon. I thought you had a health break. Yo, kidogo, yeah? Shake a moment. Before I introduce the topic that I'm about to speak about, and maybe they pull up the slides, I don't think maybe some of you are taking cognizance of the wonderful thing that we have as a gift of life. I remember, and I was walking across, meeting a lot of those attending, the partners, the Fintechs that we have in the room. I know Pauline, we worked together, Russell and the rest. The last time, believe me or not, that we met was actually in 2019 in a forum like this. So, I mean, it's something that we should actually clap and thank God for. Yeah? Yeah. I mean, that gift of life is sentimental. Well, I know when I was given this topic, actually not given, I was given an array of topics. I chose this one because it was the easiest one. But what I didn't do was ask Tradepass to actually feature me in the afternoon. I think it's not fair. Next time I should start in the morning. I've been time since 9 a.m. in the morning. So Tarun, take note. Huh? Next time I should start. Anyway, away from the light moments. Why did I pick the digital rush topic? The essence of it, according to the experience that I have, meaning 6 years in banking, other 6 or 7 years in technology, Safaricom, Access Kenya at that time, was actually the brainchild kind of aspect that I've formed. Looking back, I didn't choose really to actually sit in a bank and define this kind of relationships that we have. But then I felt that I understood what these people are talking about. And the hardest bit for the exec sitting here was actually evangelizing that aspect of that talk. Fintechs were not understood. Back in 2016, I remember I was working for this bank, and they had this fantastic mobile solution. I won't mention it, their competition. Anyway, I'll mention later. But what happened? This was the growth of, someone talked about open banking, I remember, from Stanchart. And that was the growth of this path that we had not gotten at that time. They came telling us, we need to converge these solutions. We need to put M-Pesa, these things that you have as wallets on one platform, so that customers can be able to pay for water, electricity, and the rest. Believe me or not, because today you're enjoying some fruits of something that was actually invented a couple of years back, but then you only assume that they've been acting on single rails. Right now you have the advent of fintechs. They are what we call the aggregators. Aggregators have been there since banking started. Banking started in the 15th century, right? The Medici family. And if you look at what they did at that time, they aggregated farmers or the people that you talk to. Because at some point, I know you don't talk directly to your bank, right? You buy your tokens and everything through someone else is an aggregator. That person you're calling an aggregator is actually the fintech. Well, thinking of it, what is the atom? And I'll define what that exactly means. We've actually moved or transcended into some sort of economy, right? There was that bit where you had financial slowdown, it disrupted many markets. Ideally, banks are not hit, especially in this region, because we are cash rich, we love spending on cash, and of course, we are, I'd call it mighty importers. So meaning we were not really affected by that global economy or disruption. But then onwards, what you've seen up to right now, when we face the pandemic, there was actually a surge in terms of the kind of collaboration that you should be creating with third-party entities. Initially, we looked at this as a competitive edge, okay? The aggregator to us was like the farmer looking at the middleman, if you know what I mean. This person actually has a remote test of increasing the pricing. And I don't know by show of hands, that's a simple poll. How many of you actually enjoy banking? Somebody should take note. Just by show of hands. This is interesting. I'm not recording anyway, but it's quite interesting. But then, well, the thing was, we needed to look at a way of trying to diffuse that logic of actually looking at a bank as a place you go to actually like the lifestyle you enjoy right now. I remember during COVID, I'm seeing someone here that we launched a service with. Around March in 2020, I was in a bank when we were about to launch in commerce when we faced the lockdown, okay? And the initial set of customers, we hadn't thought of that kind of growth, okay? Here we're talking about food industries, of course. I'll tell you, there's a massive growth in terms of, like, let's say, alcohol distribution that you're aware. Even churches turned into collection engines on these platforms. And of course, if you go there, you would not be told that bank XYZ is actually here. So meaning we are leveraging at a person that we thought as competition at that time to be actually an integrator between us and the customer. So whoever you're looking at right now, ideally is our friend. It's only that they hold some ground. What we lost grip on was actually the end customer. So you have your preferences. Right now you can decide to be on any platform. But again, the bank is always the one that is regulated, and as the entity, it fires up your transactions. So what is the problem? Sorry, if I can go back. So here, sorry. So here we're actually looking at the atom, defining it as the active threat and the opportunity management that you needed to face. All these things having happened, somebody thought that maybe banking would be destabilized. But then equally, as I say, we needed to be treated or look at it in an instinct. You need to be intuitive into what is coming into the market. And of course, look at how do we collaborate better with those that are actually making global trends. So what is the problem here? Sorry. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve or to look at? So historically, as I've said, we're talking about an entity that was formed in the 15th century. It has grown through transformation. And of course, with that, there are things that you onboarded and are a bit kind of slowed down with the kind of platforms that we have. So meaning you've been transacting on a banking platform that is more than 10 years. For some of you, maybe you don't know, for majority of the banks. But we've seen a transition in between when COVID hit in 2020. Most of them were disrupted in their technology backdrops. So they decided, of course, to onboard newer technologies. That is what has transpired. So meaning we are sitting as banks and observing. And here I talk also of InsurTech, Sacco banking, because they're also financial institutions. They're sitting on platforms that were a bit outdated for the kind of flexibility that you and I needed to enjoy. Meaning even for the big tech. So we're talking about the Facebooks that are coming here. We're talking about Amazon and the rest. They're actually observing this space and they're saying, okay, based on the conformance that you made with M-Pesa kind of trajectory, how do we build and optimize on an educated kind of customer set? Well, the solution is pretty obvious. And when I sat on this, I actually looked at, of course, something that we've been talking from morning till now. We're talking about partnering, collaboration, co-creation, all these nice words. But the bottom line is actually to look at the aspect of financial inclusion. For most of you don't know. We only assume that as long as you have M-Pesa, you are banked, right? The banked economy in Kenya is around, I'd say, 57%. That is the population that we have. On average, if I look at Africa-wide, based on a report by World Bank, that was for 2021, is around 65%. So you can imagine you're actually even operating below average in the number of people that are operating bank accounts. But are you transacting? Are you facing an emerging economy that you're digitized? That is the feeling that we have. So what is that magic that actually sticks in between us and also the touch points that you have with your mobile, your internet, any other platform that you're enjoying? Well, I made a listing, and maybe for those that are seated here and the fintech game, if your fintech is not here, don't feel bad, okay? I'll make sure on board another 5 or so slides in terms of what you want to have. So the riding economy, what you look at these guys, they're sorting out different industry problems or opportunity spaces. For instance, the Zeraki is actually big on education. You're looking at PesaPal. They've actually gone into any other merchant space. You're looking at Churamani. They're doing online remittance for those that are sending money inward directly from the US. Twiga, a big disruptor on the agri space. I mean, who would have actually believed that someone just buying bananas and distributing could be as big as they are? So this is just a representation of the fintech space. Currently, we have a Fintech Association of Kenya, for most of you that know. And what they boil down is actually to make sure that they are the glue that sticks the fintechs together. If you are asked what is the fintech that you actually know, for most of you, it would actually be just Safaricom. Why? Because we believe that is something we've interacted with. We've not seen other things that actually make our life easier on a daily, like let's say Twiga. I mean, M-Pesa, you interact with it every day. Soko Hela, you know, and the rest, Sasape, you've not interacted with them, but they form some bit of convergence when you look at how they interact with banking. So what is the backdrop of most of these fintechs? They've built their platforms that need to address a certain market ecosystem. I'm reminded of a time, I know like how M-Pesa really came out. And at that time, I remember Michael Joseph pointing out onto how the innovation around M-Pesa started. So this is in a farm in Thika, and they decide maybe one day we'll get into mobile lending, and they want to conceptualize that bit. But then what actually escaped the cage was the bit that these people that were lending were actually sending this money to people that were far off or far away. So they said, wait, then ideally we're not solving out the priority problem here. Actually, the remittance aspect, the P2P aspect that you're actually looking at is a bigger problem for this economy. And true to word, that is how it became. So even when you're looking at piloting platforms, I know it's usually very annoying when you tell somebody who has taken 18 months to develop a platform to come to the bank, integrate, and then we can pilot fast before you go to production. Majority of them don't understand. But these guys, in their own space, they've been able to revolutionize that. Now, I try to look at the end of things. And here we're looking at the center party, which is now the shared ecosystem between fintechs and financial institutions, and where each one of us is actually seated heavily. So if I'm addressing, like, let's say, financial institution banks, we have a broader network. Remember, we don't just operate branches. There's agency, there are channels, there's internet banking, mobile banking, and the rest. These are the customer touch points that, in essence, many fintechs come looking for. So for instance, if you go to most platforms, like let's say in banking, you can pay for, like, let's say, statutory kind of payment. You can do utility payments. They've all been converged under this platform of a shared ecosystem. What we hold is just this aspect of being naturally very good in terms of managing finance, taking care of risk, and ensuring that at least we keep the lights on. On the other side, I'll call them people who are cultured onto what I'd call instant solution providers. For them, what they're looking at is, how do I solve this problem right now, and whom do I need? So the center of convergence being the shared ecosystem, ensure that at least we can scale, have better use of data, do the convergence into more accessible solutions or services for what we have. An example is, you can imagine at the time devolution kicked off, you needed at least to pay parking for wherever you are, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, whatever. And maybe if you figure it, majority of them floated tenders, and all of us were responding, including banks. But then the hardest bit of looking at it was this. How do I tell someone to go with a PDQ, ile POS, to go to a pay point or to follow everybody that is parking in and out on a heavy traffic day to actually make a payment for that county? And some of the sums, we're talking about 30 bob, 70 bob, 50 bob. I mean, they didn't make a lot of sense. Two, it's capital intensive. So meaning I have to employ a whole army of people to actually be trailing and tracking people. And that's the biggest thing is usually reconciliation or accountability, because you don't know. In many senses or many counties, they still stuck to cash payments. So what was the center line of making sure that we actually collaborate? It easily meant that we have to go back to the fintech, look at the overlying platforms. They already have the USSD interfaces to cover everyone. They have wallets where you can actually move money to transact. But then the processing engines do not sit with them. They sit with the banks. So this is just that bit of showing the convergence of the collaboration framework that we built with them. Now, when you look at the opportunity space, in any essence, when someone comes with an idea, the first thing you ask them when they come to the bank is, what are you trying to do? And I don't know, 80% of them will tell you, I'm addressing this mama mboga. And you're like, okay, I know it's a bottom of pyramid, but what exactly do they do? In which sector do they actually fall in? Two, there's usually the bit of specialization and generalization. One thing I learned even when COVID struck, for people who are doing public sector jobs, they were funneling or fueling county businesses, these water companies and all those bodies, they were very poor at merchant acquiring. Meaning if you tell them to build an e-commerce platform, they didn't know where to get their customers. So ideally, the showcase was this. Tell them to draw a canvas. Look at or point at the sector or the target market that you want to look at what is your center line of growth. If you ask many fintechs that are seated here to give you their go-to-market plans, majority of them don't know. They actually reconciled on the bit that the bank will actually help us in terms of marketing. We'll ride on a given brand that will go to a town and will get 200,000 people. I don't even know if that is okay. So ideally, This is what you're looking at. This is the canvas that actually tells us how exactly to approach. And the interesting thing is there is no one shoe fit all kind of solution. There's none. What we have, like for instance, I'd say health. Health, if you go to Kenyatta National Hospital, they'll tell you, oh, we've got aggregated accounting platforms. We've got a hospital management system. All these modules need to talk to one another. For instance, you need to be released or discharged from, like, let's say, from a ward. But then they need to see these things. Everything needs to synchronize, okay? From the finance platform all the way to the patient management system. So how do you do that? Ideally, they don't call the bank to do that for them. So there has to be someone to hold the rope. And that is where you need these third-party entities. So if you are really good at these ERPs, that is your space. You can actually embed banking. Those modules actually come with banking in it. Then you can be able to do or transact from end to end. And also for the government. Right now, I'm also seeing the taxman also calling on banks to come and integrate their card payments on their platforms. So, I mean, for these ideal use cases, who's there to make sure that you complete the entire journey? Now, how do you choose the best match? This is actually I'd call it the topping of this entire presentation. In many cases, when somebody comes to you with a business idea, they've already gone, or they're working from the end. Let me put it that way. They think they've seen the money. So they're coming to you to actually detail to you how you, when you're on board with me, will be able to score of what I'm thinking. Ideally, it's the other way around. You need, first of all, to start from scratch. You need to look at it this way. Do I have clarity of the objectives that I want to meet with whatever I'm solving? Okay. So in ideal sense, I get someone that is doing merchant acquiring. I'll ask them, what is your logistics game? Okay. Initially, I remember setups when e-commerce grew. I remember towards the mid-2020, early 2021, when majority of us now were so free. You know, the thing was trust. Yeah, trust actually is a business currency. So in many cases, people are just like, okay, I want to buy food from, I'd say, like, let's say an outlet, but then I want it delivered here. And of course, it will be brought. But then you remember there's actually a merchant that has aggregated to that. And the person that is integrating to the bank needs to start thinking of the logistical game, yeah? One, I remember approaching one of the food outlets. They told us, you know what? They're actually a global entity. We can't work with you. Why? Because your customers have a peculiar behavior. Apparently, Kenyans, we have a habit of returning food when it's cold, yeah? Did you know that? Many of you didn't know that. And that actually could be the end of your business, yeah? Because you can imagine your merchant acquirer in that space. Somebody ordered for their pizza or their coffee. Then I see people now using bicycles. That guy goes all the way, your logistical game is messed up, and they deliver it at your doorstep, and you feel it's cold. That calls for a chargeback. So meaning it has already diluted the kind of eco space that you have with that customer. So the objectivity of it, what are you trying to solve? What do you want to realize? What is your DNA? That one should come out. It's not this talk of Kenyans, tunajaribu, you know, we are trying. Eh? That should not come there. You need to be very clear. Two, choose an FI-friendly partner. Here we're talking about, it's not, look here, I work for National Bank. Of course, we have KCB also, Kenya. We're part of the 7 subsidiaries within the group. The other competitors that you're talking about, they have their own, we all have our own strengths. Pick your market. National Bank, we are very good at government business, right? The MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, we do quite some good job there. Ideally, that is a fit you can actually look at. Same as maybe retail for KCB. Maybe I'm blowing a horn, but you can pick your friend from that kind of subset. Bring the fintechs and listen or learn. This goes to the banks seated here. You need to listen to them. At times, the ideas are not as crazy as you think. Two, even if they want to get into the lending game, this is a fight that I've never been able to absolve anywhere else, because in many cases, it looks as if you're competing with that kind of entity. What are they planning to do? I remember in my previous role, there was this fintech in Molo. All of you know where Molo is. It's in Nakuru County. And what they were doing is actually they were lending to KCC farmers. First of all, they have a specific market they were targeting. They have these specific customers that they're dealing with. And two, they have a lending platform that is not just open. It's actually a closed kind of loop. It's the same way we are tied in M-Pesa. But they didn't have the money. So meaning, it's not a Tala or branch to me. When they approached the bank, it sounded quite off. But then, okay, what if you advance you as a loan? Then it was a game of playing with the interest. And of course, they take care of the risk. That one will tell you that is a friendly person to work with, because at that time, at that place I was in, was big in working in that kind of spaces. Where possible, please pilot. Always ask for this. Because as I told you, you've seen M-Pesa story. There are so many that I've seen when interacting with fintechs. You thought you're sorting out a traffic issue. You end up landing on something else, okay? So one, you decided to put your shop on Kimathi Street here in town. Then you realize you're not addressing the right market. So the people who are buying seem to be actually driving. They park here, they inconvenience everybody. It's a problem with the law. Then you should transfer your market to a more addressable market. So pilot if you can. Take time to understand how the market dynamic works. The issue of regulatory and compliance, why I put it last is because at times people look at banks as regulators. No, we are not. We are regulated heavily. In fact, when you are pinched, let me use that term used in the street, we also affected in a big way. There are certain laws. For instance, there is the NPS Act for 2011, Section 39. That one enforces or tells you or addresses the issue of fintechs and how it should be rolled out. People have heard a lot of the Data Protection Act. There's the POCAMLA, Process of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing. All these things are being checked. Your money lands in a bank account, remember, at the end of the day. So for the fintechs collaborating with the banks, please make sure that at least you carry along also the regulator. Here I'm talking about CBK. If you're going to address a telco service, the CA, make sure you're telling them, this is whom we're working with as a bank, but this is the prototype that I have, and this is what it will help you, because let me tell you, you're not going to launch that service. Then the next thing, you're being asked for a product line by the regulator, and it's something that is totally amiss. So that should be a critical point to actually think about. Last, but not least, is actually this angle. I didn't want to say this. I'll let you read it aloud, yeah? So if you let me, maybe MC, Ram, with your permission, I'll ask them to actually read what the great Martin Luther King actually said. This is actually a thesis on banks and fintech. I think this is the direction we should take in collaborating and working together. So maybe give it a go. Let's build, not walls. We should not be divided. We should actually be linked. That is what it means. For that, I think that's done. Done. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.